Hello, and welcome to the Gifted in Real Life podcast, where we interview individuals who have careers based on their talents and interests. And today we have a guest who is no exception to that. Nikki Smith is joining us, and she has a very unique career. And I am so excited to have this discussion and hear more all about what it is that she does. So thank you, Nikki, for joining me, and welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
All right. So why don't you give us a brief introduction of yourself and tell us what it is that you do?
Sure. So my name is Nikki. I live in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm an end-of-life doula and a grief coach. So my quick, 10-second way to describe this, I provide comfort, guidance, and support to the dying and to their loved ones. And I also help the bereaved on walking with their journey through grief.
Oh, wow. So, Nikki, I have to ask, do you have a unique skill set that makes you uniquely qualified for this type of a career?
I have a very, very deep feeling of compassion all the time. I'm also very much an empath.
I was just going to ask you that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm very
All right.
empathic, very much empathic, sometimes to a fault, you know, but and I've struggled with that, honestly, because I spent pretty much my entire adult life up until just a couple of years ago. I'm in my 40s now, working in corporate America, and nothing about that is really compassionate at all. And I've strived in everything I do outside of work to try to help people. I'm always full of so much compassion for other humans, especially those who are suffering. And all I ever want to do is just hold people close to me and try to ease their pain. So once I discovered this line of work, I'm like, oh, this is for me, 100%.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah.
So what led you to this particular role? Like, how did you get into this?
So, like most people, I'm no stranger to loss and grief myself. I lost my brother unexpectedly back in 2015 when he was only 40 years old. Again, it was very unexpected and sudden. So, I also lost my mother-in-law the same year. She was also rather young, and that was also unexpected. So, I've had a lot of death in my life. I lost a very close friend of mine, and then since then, I've lost more close friends to cancer. So, death has been something that's been around me a lot in my adult life, unfortunately. And I don't feel like I'm the exception to the rule in that. I think we all are. But just in all the time I spent trying to navigate my own grief and sort through my own emotions that came with all of this, I just felt so passionate about trying to help other people with this as well. And I've always felt very passionate about like a death positive movement. I've never been scared to talk about death and dying. I've never been scared to be around the dying or around death in general. At one point I thought about, going into funeral directing or being a mortician. It just wasn't quite up my alley. The science part of it, I think, scared me off a bit. But no, it's just something I've always been passionate about. And then during COVID, like a lot of people, I just started reevaluating my life. And I said, I need to just be doing what is meaningful to me and just cut the rest out of my life. So I started my own practice in 2020, very beginning of 2022. So about a year and a half ago. And here I am.
Wow. Yeah, I would say COVID left a lot of people in a pensive state, and I'm
Yeah.
definitely no exception. I remember I got to the point where I had to stop watching the news, and to this day, I don't watch it.
Me neither.
And I took some time to process what I was feeling and what was going on because my husband and I have small children, and I had to help them navigate
Oh,
their
yeah.
feelings about what was going on. And this is a little bit off the subject, but I found for a period of time a way that I sort of was able to cope and kind of zone out and withdraw for a bit was to start watching a series that I loved on TV as a child.
Okay.
And when I tell you, it really brought me some peace. It's the
Oh,
strangest thing. It was Little House on the Prairie.
I love Little House on the Prairie. Oh,
I
I
did
grew up
too.
watching that too.
I did too.
My mom would read us the books when we were little. Oh, anyway.
Well, my grandparents have both passed away, but they raised me. As a matter of fact, I called my grandfather Daddy. I didn't call
Oh,
him Grandpa. And my grandmother, they used to tease me for running home after school to watch that show.
Oh, no, I would never tease you because that show is fantastic.
Well, I mean, it was in a, the best way possible.
Right. No, I know.
But and I think it brought me comfort just knowing that it was something that they watched too, because they're no
Yeah.
longer here. But it's interesting the way that people sort of cope with grief and how long it can last. My grandparents have passed away. It's been a while. One of them passed away in 2006 and the other in 2013, but I still
Yeah.
like I still deal with it. So
Oh yeah, grief is not something that goes away. It's with you forever and you just learn to walk with it and it shapes who you are as a person. So
yeah, yeah. Well, so tell me about the transition then. How did you go from working in the corporate world to this? What was the catalyst for that?
I mean, again, I think COVID had a lot to do with it. But I also was working with a life coach at the time who, I'm such a cautious person and I'm one of those people that plans everything out. I have lists, spreadsheets galore. And, she's trying to push me to just do something. And I'm like, well, I gotta plan this out. And she finally just convinced me, like, just do this. So I took, it took a little bit of a leap of faith and started this practice. A little over a year, like year and a half ago. And it's still been kind of a slow transition, you know, coming fully out of that and into fully this. But yeah.
And so you were already working with a life coach.
Yeah, she was the one, and I'm no longer like working with her, but she was the one that really pushed me to get there. She was fantastic. I recommend life coaches. I know several now, and I always recommend them to anybody. Like that was life changing for me just to have somebody like, I mean, my husband obviously has faith in me. My family has faith in me, but to have a complete stranger be like, you got this, you can do this is huge. Sometimes that's all you need as a little external validation that, you're a good person, you've got great qualities and you need to use them.
Right.
Mhm.
So she was a big motivating force. She was a big encouragement to you. How
Mhm.
did you figure this out though? What was that process like? What kind of steps did you go through to figure out this is what you wanted to do or that it was even a thing?
Yeah, well, I'd heard about death doulas like probably a decade or so ago. There's a YouTube channel I enjoyed watching called Ask a Mortician, and she did a whole episode just talking about death doulas. And I'm like, wait a minute, this sounds kind of cool. Sounds like something I'd be really good at, but it's one of those like, that sounds really neat, but I've got a job, I'm fine. And it was just one of those, it was in the back of my brain all that time. And I never really considered actually doing it until all of this. And then I signed up for a training class. I went through the International End of Life Doula Association. And they have a long, like a really good intensive training program that's done through Zoom like this. And yeah, I went through the training and I started taking some like side classes or workshops on how to build a business, what you need to do to get an LLC in this state and all the paperwork. And it was a slow process. I worked on it over, I don't know, probably 6 to 8 months just to kind of get all the pieces together before I was ready to just like, rip the Band-Aid off and say, here I am, let's go.
All right. Wow. So walk me through a session. What do you do with people and how do they come to you to work with you as a
So
doula?
yeah, most word of mouth has been for the most part so far. I've had a few people that found me like just Googling death doula in Columbus, Ohio. But my first meeting, I will just do an initial consultation with whomever it is that's called me first. Sometimes it's a family member, sometimes it's the actual dying person. And I'll just spend like an hour with them and really get to know them as a person, find out their situation. Like, let's talk about what your prognosis is, where they are in the process, and, especially where they are mentally in the process. Are they fully accepting of this? Do they need a little help, you know, getting past that initial hump of denial and get into, a little more acceptance? Not that denial is a bad thing, but do they need a little help getting ready to just, finalize all the stuff? After that, I'll have sessions with them, depending on the person, every week or so, every 2-3 weeks, to just work on their vigil plan. What do we want the last few days to look like? What do we want the last couple of weeks to look like? Get everything in writing. If they want to do some kind of like a legacy project, I can help them put together something to leave behind for their family. It's really unique person to person. Sometimes I will just spend the entire hour or 2 hours with this person each week discussing their life, letting them go like review their life. Have they felt, do they have any unfinished business? Do they feel like they've accomplished everything they needed to accomplish? Can they leave this world feeling ready? So that's my biggest goal. I want people to leave this world and leave their life knowing that everything's taken care of and they're ready to go.
Wow, that is just profound. Like I'm thinking about that, and I'm not in a situation where I have, some looming diagnosis or anything like that. And I mean, I'm thinking about it. So,
Yeah. And that's something I can work with people at any point in their life. They don't have to have a diagnosis or be dying, but if somebody's going through that period, and that I did take some training for grief coaching. And there's, a little bit of life coaching in that as well to, help somebody who might not even have a prognosis of death to just process, hey, this is going to happen someday. Where am I in my life? Do I feel ready? If I died tomorrow, would I feel like I've lived my life the way I wanted to?
wow, that's something. So, have you ever, can you share like one of the most challenging um, clients, not, anything
Yeah,
specific, like anybody's
right.
details, the most challenging aspect of working with someone? Like, do
Yeah.
you find people more resistant or open to this process? Who usually recommends you? Is it a family member or is it the
Yeah.
person? Like, talk me through that.
Usually it's either a family member or a close friend, or the dying person themselves. And if I'm even meeting with them, then they're open to it. Because if somebody's not open to this whole process, they're not even going to want to see me ever. So I rarely see that. I haven't seen that yet with any of my clients. I haven't met with anybody that's like, get out of my house. I don't want you here or anything like that. Um, I have had people that were not ready, but they contacted me a little too late, and they only had, at that point I didn't know, but it was only a couple weeks left in their life, and
Mhm.
unfortunately I just did not get the chance to really go over life review with. I was able to be there for the family. I was able to be there with that person as they were actively dying and just kind of sit with them and provide a comfortable environment. But I just it feels like a little bit of a failure on my behalf, but it's also not my fault. I can't we can't schedule death, unfortunately. And I have had that. I've had at least one person who had a long history of trauma in their life. And I'm not a
Mm.
psychiatrist or psychologist, so I'm not equipped with the knowledge to help people process trauma. I did my best, and I at least got her to a state where she was mentally comfortable, but there was no real time or way to address all of her previous traumas.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I know. Again, it's one of those things I can't view it as a failure because it's not necessarily my fault, but I just wish I could have done a little. I'm always going to wish that with probably every client, as I wish there was one more day I could have spent with them or one more thing we could have done. But
So, do you or have you ever worked with the family after the loved one has passed away?
yeah, I make it a point to continue to stay in contact with the family, at least for a little bit after the person has passed. It depends if I'm going to be part of the funeral arranging, like if they want help planning how that's going to go, if I'm invited to the funeral or to any memorial services, that'll happen. But I will try to stay in contact to give them some space, like once a week or so, just for a short amount of time to help process what they've seen, what they went through, because witnessing, especially if they're in the room, witnessing somebody die can be traumatic. Even if it's a peaceful death, it's still, watching somebody die is not easy for everybody. Especially if you've never witnessed it before. So just kind of letting them talk to me, process that and get that out so that they can feel their feelings and know that everything they're feeling is valid and they're okay, and give them a safe space to talk about that. I will definitely do that. If I've had families just like, thanks, bye, and never contact me again, and I'm not going to push that. But I'll at least send a card or a letter, a couple months out, just say, let you know I'm still thinking about you and I hope you're well. And that's about it.
What are some things that you were able to help that person leave behind? You talked a little bit about a legacy plan.
Yeah, yeah. So legacy projects can be any and everything. it can be as simple as writing letters to your family members to say anything you want to say before or after you're gone. It doesn't necessarily have to be deep, dark secrets or anything profound, but just, reassuring their family, I loved you, and I'll always love you. I'll be with you. Or if they want to do like a physical, like make a video with some storytelling. There's a woman I know in Indianapolis who runs an organization called the Memory Collective, and she helps people do exactly that. They can record oral or video storytelling to pass on to their family and loved ones. It could be making like a photo album, putting a book together, make a movie, or organize an event. I have yet to do a pre-funeral, but I've always wanted to, where you have your funeral before you're gone. So that's definitely something I can do, but just helping the family put together something they have to remember that person by, or for the dying person, give them something they can give to their loved ones to remember them.
Okay. So I want to talk a bit about you going from having a 9 to 5 to becoming an entrepreneur. What's been your biggest challenges?
So this line of work, unfortunately, is all but impossible to do full time and receive full time, compensation for something like this. There are, I charge appropriately, but there are some situations where I've got somebody that doesn't have, this is all out of pocket. Like what I do, unfortunately, is not covered by insurance. No, I'm not under a hospice umbrella. I don't work with any organization. I'm on my own. So there are some people that just cannot fully afford to pay my full fees. And I'm not going to turn somebody down or push them away and say, because that doesn't seem fair to me. But so I have other like little things I do here and there just to kind of fill in the gaps with income. I have a podcast and I have a Patreon and I do some assistant work and things like that. So the biggest challenge has just been having enough. It's hard too to find a good balance, because if I've got too many clients, I can't devote the amount of time I need to each individual one. So
is this something that you would consider coaching other people on how to do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Do you have anybody on your team who sort of helps you out if you do get overwhelmed?
Yeah, actually, there are a handful of other death doulas here in Columbus, and I know all of them. I at least chat with them occasionally. There's a couple I see on a regular basis, and we all confer with each other. And like, we're happy to throw each other business or clients if we're feeling overwhelmed. Absolutely. I'm also the organization I received my training through. We all communicate with each other. We have a giant like Facebook page, and there's online support groups. So we can all lean on each other for things like that as well.
Nice. Nice. So how did you explain to your family what you wanted to do?
I just told them. No one was surprised. No one was taken aback.
And why was that?
Because I've always been a little weird. No, and like my mom, I was a little concerned about letting my mom know I was going to do this, because she's always so cautious, and she's always been so concerned about like, I cut my hair into a mohawk once, and she's like, "Oh, you're going to lose your job. You're never going to get employment." And it's like, Mom, it's fine. It's, I do things like that, and she worries. But when I told her I wanted to do this, the first thing she said was, "Anybody who gets you as their doula will be lucky."
Oh,
so yeah,
that's so sweet.
Everybody in my life has been fully supportive. They've been amazing. Like I said, I've known so many people. Everybody in my family has been through loss of some kind or another, especially with my brother passing away. And we've all known somebody that's had cancer or who's died, right? I think that's a pretty safe assumption that almost everybody's known somebody close to them who has passed. And just letting them, hear that I'm doing this, they're like, "That's huge. I wish I had something like that when my grandmother died, or my great aunt, or whatever." So yeah, everybody's been very supportive.
So have you had an opportunity to help anybody in your family or in your circle, friends or family, or would you choose not to?
No one in my family yet. I would be open to it. It would depend on who it is. Obviously with my parents, I'd rather just be present as their daughter. And I don't know how open they would be to having another doula come in, but I could at least have that training in me that'll always be in the back of my head. But part of the reason I do what I do is so the loved ones can just be there as a loved one and not be a caregiver. It takes some of that off their shoulders. So if it were like I said, my parents, I would rather just be there as their daughter and be with them. I have my very first client was the mother of a friend of mine who was in stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. So yeah, it's been some strangers, some friends, no family yet.
So, as when you said that who your first client was, I had a bit of a reaction. I understand being an empath very well.
Mhm.
How do you sort of cleanse and recharge as you go through this work?
Yeah. So I do have to take a little bit of time, especially if I've been with somebody as they've died. Um, I'm there, I'm happy to do what I do. I've got my doula face on, but when I leave that situation and I'm on my own, I do need to take some time to process my own emotions because I'm a human being too. I'm not a robot. And I don't know a robot would do this job real well. But yeah, I feel it. I carry it with me. I absolutely do. And it's just I take some alone time. I go for a walk. I'm really big on journaling. I'll write out everything that happened that day. I'll talk about my feelings and how it impacted me. And just like, you know, puking it out on a page, for lack of a better word, really helps me process everything and just know that it's there. I've dealt with it. We're okay. And that's not to say I'm like, 2 hours and I'm fine. I still think about clients I had, 2, 3 years ago. You never forget clients, like especially if you're present with them for a long period of time, you're never going to forget that. So it's always with
Right.
me. It's always in my heart. But like anybody, I just take my time. I process it the best I can. I feel my feelings and then I give them back to the universe.
Mm, mm. I'm gonna have to add that last part. That's something that I say to my kids. Feel your feelings, and then
Yeah.
you got to move on.
Yeah, that's a huge, especially if I'm coaching somebody through grief. I'm like, you got to feel your feelings. Never ignore them. Don't push them down. Don't hide them. Don't ignore them. Feel them. Let them out. Go outside and scream at the sky if you need to for a minute. If that's what you need to do in that moment, go do it. As long as you're not harming anybody else, feel your feelings. They're there for a reason.
Right. So, in your work, do you work with just adults or do you work with both adults and children?
So far, I've only worked with adults. I had a friend of a friend whose child has an end stage brain cancer. They have not reached out to me, and that's fine. So I have not yet worked with children, but I'm absolutely open to it. That's a very different dynamic. And I know our children's hospital here in Columbus has their own hospice program, and they are absolutely amazing. So, but I would be open to working with children.
Yeah. I used to be a volunteer for the Make-A-Wish Foundation for about 5 years,
Oh,
and
that's
I was a
amazing.
wish, yeah, I was a wish grantor, which meant that I say I was a wish grantor. I don't know if that was the title, but I got to go and interview the families.
Yeah.
So interview the kids, and what they would have us do is be separate from the parents so we could talk to the kid and make sure that it was their wish.
Yeah.
And a lot of people think that kids who are supported by Make-A-Wish are all terminal, but they're not. And as
Hmm.
a matter of fact, in that time, I only had one child who passed away, and it was an unfortunate situation because she had this is how they said it, this is not how I say it, the good kind of cancer, and she was
Okay.
supposed to recover. It was not as advanced, but she
Yeah.
was 4 years old and she did not make it. And it was a
Oh,
shock. Well, it was a
yeah.
shock for me. I'm sure it was for her family, but I actually
Yeah.
did have an opportunity to go to her services, and
Hmm.
her parents were so stoic. Like they
Oh,
were just,
wow.
I don't know where they got the strength. And so
Hmm.
I just had to look at them and take my cues
Hmm.
because it was a lot to take in,
Yeah.
for this 4-year-old child. But if they could hold it together, surely I could. So,
Oh my gosh. I can't. I mean, I've known of children who have died. And I don't have children of my own. I'm, 45. I've never had children, so I can't even pretend to imagine what it's like, and I won't. That's not fair. But oh wow,
Yeah, it is hard. I mean, I couldn't imagine. So,
yeah.
so shifting gear. What's gears? What's been a pleasant surprise throughout this work that you do and this journey?
Just how open people are to what I do and to this line of work. When I was going through training, I hear snippets of not horror stories, but I hear of a lot of people are like, oh, they wanted to hire me, but their family was like, no, we don't want the stranger in our house, or people getting, butting heads with hospice workers. But I've never experienced any resistance whatsoever, especially with hospice. Like I feel like there's an underlying feeling from hospices that we're threatening their business, which we're not, because we don't do what they do. We're working in tandem with hospice. But every person I've worked with who's in hospice, like their nurses, their staff are wonderful with me. They talk to me just like they would talk to me like a family member, and let me be present and do what I need to do. And then most of them are just more curious than anything else to hear about me and what it is I do. Because this isn't the newest profession in the world, but it's newish. So a lot of people haven't met a doula or haven't heard of death doulas and understand fully what it is we do. So that it's been fascinating that I haven't had a single person reject me or look down their nose at me for this.
Yeah, I only know a doula for having babies. So can you
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit, like the
Yeah.
name doula and what that means and how
Yeah.
sort of this title came to be?
Sure. Well, and doula is from the ancient Greek word, which means female slave, which I'm never quite comfortable with, but the whole like birth doulas, most people know what those are, right? And those are just midwives, women who typically women, not always, who provide the comfort and support during the birthing process that isn't necessarily a nurse and not a doctor. So you're not doing any of the medical stuff, but you're there because you have the experience, you know what to expect, you know what's happening, and you're there to coach that. It's kind of like a coach, more or less. And you're there to coach the mother through the process of having the baby. And it's very similar. That whole process is like what death doulas are modeled after. Because, just like a birth doula is helping bring life into the world, we're just helping them go back out again. So yeah, it's just the non-medical support that can be so imperative during these times.
Right. So what is your ultimate goal for people when you work with them? What is it that you want to accomplish by the time you're finished working with them that will make you feel like I did my job there. I did what I was supposed to do.
As long as they can tell me at some point or, make me feel at some point that they are ready, they have no unfinished business, and they're at peace with the fact that they're going to die. And that's my biggest goal. Like I said, I can't bear the thought of anybody dying alone. And I can't bear the thought of anybody dying thinking their life had no impact or no meaning, or feeling like they didn't get to, accomplish everything, which none of us will. We won't get to accomplish everything we've always wanted to do. But I just want to make sure that when somebody leaves this world, they leave comfortable with it and that they're ready.
So, what would you say is an optimal amount of time that you'd like to be able to work with someone?
I would say like minimum, I would like to have 2 to 3 months, and that's like minimum. I've stepped in with somebody who was only there about 3 to 4 weeks, I believe. Things just sped up quicker than anybody had anticipated, but like bare minimum, I would like 2 to 3 months and that's considering the last 2 weeks or so the person will likely be unresponsive or unable to have a meaningful conversation with somebody. So I would like to have, minimum 2 to 3 months to just sit down and give them time to process. And it's also going to depend on the client. Some people are way not ready, and I might need 6 months with them to just really help work through everything they need to do and get everything in order for their last days.
What would you like people to know about working with someone like you?
We're not we're not there to steal anybody's thunder. We're there because we care and we want to help, and there's so much I've heard before, well, that's really neat what you do, but like hospice is a thing, so I don't really need a doula, do I? But hospice is great. It is absolutely amazing. They are great with pain management and they'll help you get any paperwork together you might need, but they don't have the staff to sit with your family and help them process what's going on. They don't have the time to sit with you while you're actively dying unless you can pay for 24-hour care, which a lot of times is separate. Hospice only covers so much, and you're going to have to pay out of pocket for 24-hour nursing care or for an aide, things like that. So to have somebody like me who could be present to facilitate all that too, like who's coming in and out of the room, it's so important to have an impartial third party to just help navigate all this with you. And it's confusing. Some people don't know what to expect with hospice. How do we even start it? What do I get? What happens? To have somebody there with the knowledge and the education to just say, what's coming, what to expect.
Wow. So for you, what are your ultimate career goals as far as being a death doula goes?
I want to be in the trenches, so to speak. I just want to continue doing what I do best. I'm happy to do community education. I do speaking engagements from time to time to just educate the public as to who we are and what we do. And I would love to keep doing that, but I just want to keep accompanying people and helping as many families as I can.
Okay. All right. Well, before we go, I like to ask a couple of personal things to kind of lighten the mood. And so
Sure.
my question for you is, what is something about you that might be whimsical or quirky or lighthearted that people would be surprised to know about you?
I have a long background in improv comedy.
Oh,
Yeah, I've been
wow.
doing improv comedy for 20 plus years probably now. So yeah, I love comedy and I love physical comedy. I can do a pratfall like you've never witnessed before.
Wow, that's interesting. That has been so far the number one answer I've gotten, something
Really?
related to acting skills.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. Yep. Myself included. I am 12 hours away from a degree in theater.
Oh, I got my college degree in theater, actually.
Oh,
So yeah,
well,
good
my
for
undergrad
you.
is in English, but I won't finish that. It's the weirdest thing. The college that I went to, at the time, they required us to declare a minor. And so I had
Okay,
so many hours in it that I almost have a degree in it. So
that's awesome.
yeah, but after my year, they didn't make anybody else do that. So
Okay.
yeah, it was weird.
Hmm.
Um, and what do you wish more people knew about the human spirit?
We are all we're all human beings, you know. We all have our own feelings. We all have our own pain. And when you meet somebody who is not the nicest person in the world, who is causing you problems, a lot of times almost every time, it's because they're suffering in their own way. And if we could all just understand that we all have our own pain and our own suffering that we might not share with the world, we might not know how to cope with, it would be easier to be gentle with other people. And the more gentle you are, the more that can spread and the more gentle the next person might be.
Wow, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. So if somebody would like to reach out to you or work with you, can you tell
Yeah.
us how they can find you?
Absolutely. My website is nikkithedeathdoula.com, and Nikki is spelled Nikki. So I've got all sorts of information on the services I offer. You can contact me right through that website. Yeah, there's a link to my podcast and everything. All my social media is on there as well. So,
All right. Thank you so much, Nikki. It
oh
has been
yeah,
really an interesting conversation.
yeah,
Definitely a unique industry. I
yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you.